and welcome. This morning I'm going to be walking up the River Granter from Cambridge to Grantchester. It's a couple of miles, it'll take me about 3/4 of an hour, and my route is more or less going to follow the river. I'm starting off here from the mill pond in the centre of Cambridge. Behind me here is Darwin College, Cambridge, and the place I'm hoping to arrive at is the Orchard Tea Gardens in Grantchester. So, let's go. This area here is known as Sheep's Green, and back in the 19th century this was the area designated for bathing. If you look carefully on the other side of the river, you'll see a metal spike sticking up, and this is what's left of the ladders that allowed the swimmers to lower themselves into the water. In those days it was really only the men who were allowed to bathe here, men and boys, and of course they bathed naked. They didn't have swimming costumes, but nevertheless punts used to pass up here on their way to Grantchester, and it was always a little bit shocking for some of the people on the punts to see these naked bathers. This area here is what's known as the Paradise Nature Reserve, and it's been left to go entirely wild for the benefit of birds, animals, insects, butterflies, and also if we were to come here in the evening time we would find a lot of bats flying here. At this point we emerge from Paradise Nature Reserve into Newnham, the hamlet of Newnham, just on the edge of Cambridge, and from here we pass through a few houses for a couple of hundred metres until we are back into the water meadows again. This here is Eltisley Avenue, and the poets Ted Hughes and Sylvia Plath lived here at number 55 during the first years of their marriage. And from here, just at the end of Newnham, the path begins that takes us down into Grantchester Meadows and thence to Grantchester village itself. And here at the end of the path we come out into what is known as Grantchester Meadows. It's a little bit wet underfoot today, it rained heavily last night, but nevertheless let's go and see. If you come down here early in the morning, especially during the summertime, you'll invariably find people bathing in this pool here. We have a saying, of course, that if all the cows in a field are lying down, then it's a sign that it's going to rain. So I'm glad to see that not all of them are lying down, and at least some of them are standing up. This one here looks a little bit frightened of me. At the weekends we'd invariably see people punting up here or paddleboarding up here, but during the weekdays and especially in the mornings it's tranquil and quiet. Nobody else around at all, really. Of course, during the summertime this is a place where students come and just sit by the river and enjoy the long summer evenings. You've probably heard the song by Pink Floyd, Grantchester Meadows. In fact, their guitarist David Gilmour lived and grew up just at the entrance to the meadows where we came in. In her letters to her mother, Sylvia Plath often writes about Grantchester meadows. We walked 15 miles yesterday through the woods, fields and fen, and came home through moonlit Granchester and fields of sleeping cows. In one of the summers just before the First World War, the painter Augustus John came to live here in these meadows. He had been called up to Cambridge to paint the portrait of the classic scholar at Newnham, Jane Harrison. And he came to live in these meadows with his two wives, Ida Nettleship and Dorothy McNeil, in two gypsy caravans, and between them there, it said, around 10 children. And they lived absolutely like gypsies for the whole of the summer that they were here. In fact, it's said that Augustus John spent a lot of the time actually in brawls in the pubs of Cambridge. Noted many times that Granchester probably holds a greater concentration of Nobel Prize winners than any other village in the world. But without a doubt, the most famous resident of Grantchester has been the poet Rupert Brooke. He came up to study at King's College, Tripos in Classics, in 1906, graduated in 1909, and after that he decided he wanted to get away from the bustle of Cambridge, and he moved into the village of Grantchester. Grantchester is only a couple of miles along the river from Cambridge, and yet it's as if we are stepping into another world. Virginia Woolf, when she came to Cambridge, noted that actually she didn't like it very much because she found it too hectic, and it was always a relief to escape to somewhere like Grantchester. And here we come out onto the cricket ground of Grantchester. There's no play today, partly that's because it's too wet, but often weekends in summer, the sound of leather on willow echoes from this ground. And here we are, we've arrived at the tea gardens. It was a spring morning in 1897 when a group of students asked Mrs. Stevenson of Orchard House if she wouldn't mind serving them tea beneath the blossoming fruit trees of the orchard, rather than on the front lawn, as was her usual custom. It was the start of a great Cambridge tradition. So, this is what we came here for, a cream tea. Let's start. A lovely pot of tea, and then a scone with Devon clotted cream and strawberry jam. Look, the sun has come out just for us. Look at this. We spread on some cream. Despite the health warning, this is the healthiest tea that you could possibly want to have. And then some strawberry jam. Look at that. Let's taste. Delicious. So it was in the years just before the First World War that this tea garden found itself as the backdrop to a most extraordinary set of people. After he finished his degree, Rupert Brooke moved here to Grantchester and rented a room in the house just behind the orchard here. He lived a very simple life. He lived eating just milk, honey, eggs and fruit. He spent his mornings studying and reading and writing poetry, possibly running to the nearby village of Haslingfield, which is just 3 or 4 miles behind me here. In the evenings, he would invariably go swimming in the river. He wandered barefoot around the village here. He was well known for that. But in the afternoon, he was visited by his friends from Cambridge who would walk up the river, just as we have done, to visit him. The philosophers Bertrand Russell and Ludwig Wittgenstein, Maynard Keynes, the economist, Augustus John, the painter, and the novelists E.M. Forster and Virginia Woolf were just some of the ones. Those years just before the First World War were an extraordinary period. They were a time of immense elegance and opulence. There was huge optimism. Europe had been at peace for almost 100 years since the Battle of Waterloo. Who could have thought what was just around the corner? And of course the most famous words that Rupert Brooke penned were in his poem, The Soldier. If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. And of course how ironic those words turned out to be, because unfortunately Rupert Brooke ended his days in Greece, on the island of Skyros. It was during the First World War. He was on a ship on the journey to Gallipoli when he was bitten by a mosquito. The wound went septic, and when the ship docked one afternoon at Skyros, he went ashore, and later that afternoon he died. And of course he's buried there on the island of Skyros, and his grave is still there for people to visit. To see the branches stir across the moon at Granchester, to smell the thrilling sweet and rotten, unforgettable, unforgotten river smell, and hear the breeze sobbing in the little trees. Say, do the elm clumps greatly stand, still guardians of that holy land? The chestnut shades in reverent dream the yet unacademic stream? Is dawn a secret shy and cold, anadyomine, silver gold? And sunset still a golden sea from Haslingfield to Madingley? And after, ere the night is born, do hares come out about the corn? Oh, is the water sweet and cool, gentle and brown above the pool? And laughs the immortal river still under the mill, under the mill? Say, is there beauty yet to find, and certainty of quiet kind? Deep meadows yet for to forget the lies and truths and pain? Oh, yet stands the church clock at 10 to 3, and is there honey still for tea?